Very good morning to all our dear listeners and viewers. Welcome to yet another edition of ACFIM Talks. Today we discuss the politics behind conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Your host, Felix Kafuma, and I'll be joined by a full team. Today it's a full team of experts who are going to do justice to understand what is it that is fueling the conflict in the Eastern DRC. But before we start, I usually take this time to encourage everybody out there to join and be part of these discussions. We are live on all our social media platforms. We are live on YouTube, on Facebook, and also on Twitter. Facebook, yeah, below you can see. YouTube, it is ACFIM Uganda, Twitter at ACFIM UG, and Facebook, it is ACFIM. Like it is the case, I usually provide a bit of a context within which the discussions are anchored. It's important that the viewers out there and the listeners come on board so that they can benefit from the discussions. If for those that have been following the developments, you all know that early in the week, specifically on Monday, the 13th of June, 2022, the M23 rebels in the Democratic Republic of Congo struck again and captured Bunagana. It's the town in the eastern DRC, which is very close to Uganda's own Bunagana Town Council. And this has followed weeks of fighting. Remember, also somewhere around March, there were also similar attacks. But this time around, the Congolese soldiers, I think around Tuesday, were seen. I think Monday evening was seen fleeing to Uganda together with refugees and into the Bunagana. That's they were seen fleeing to Uganda, Chisoro district. There's also a town called Bunagana there, which is very close. It's about less than 10 minutes walk. Following that development on Wednesday, 15th of June, 2022, the president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, who is also the current chairman of the East African of EAC, issued a statement calling for deployment of a standby force into the DRC to deal with the crisis, and also called for an immediate cessation of all hostilities. In the DRC capital, on the other end, Kinshasa, and also Goma town, the North Kivu province, protests broke out by the Congolese nationals against Uganda and Rwanda, accusing the two countries of supporting the M23 rebels. In the wake of these protests, the DRC parliament has also called for suspension of the joint military operation against ADF rebels in DRC. We all know that Uganda is in DRC under the operation named Operation Shuja. So, but as we speak now, following those developments, as we speak now, Operation Shuja has been put on hold. And also we understand that the president, I think yesterday, of Uganda, General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, held a security meeting over the situation in DRC. And many people will tell you that they saw this coming the moment Uganda went to DRC again. These fresh fights between the M23 and the Congolese National Army come at a time when the Democratic Republic of Congo has just joined the East African Community, that bloc. And if you've been following the developments, they joined on the 29th of March, 2022. In today's ACFIM Talks, we discuss the intricacies of this conflict to understand what are the motivators, and we ask a question: is it money or ethnic hegemony that is driving this unending conflict? And with me in the studios, I have a full team, and this time we have a lady who has joined us. We have Edgar and Dismas. They have been here before. I will introduce them. Let me start with the lady. The lady is Miriam Kyomugasho. You are very welcome to ACFIM Talks. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Miriam from Ohio. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. USA. She's a Pan-African scholar based in USA, and also she's currently the Director of Research at Center for Constitutional Governance, CCG. It's very good to have you on set today.
Thanks.
Then also allow me to also introduce and also welcome they are becoming regulars because they often are part of these conversations, especially that are talking about the geopolitics of the of Africa. Let me start with Edgar Tabaro, who is a lawyer and a partner at Karohanga Tabaro Associates (KTA), one of the leading firms in Uganda. Edgar specialized in intellectual property, corporate law, construction law, and insolvency, including energy and gas. Edgar, you're most welcome. Is also a passionate and an ardent follower of the developments in the geopolitics of this continent. You are most welcome, Edgar. I think you muted.
Oh no, is it muted?
Okay. Now I can hear you.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Felix, for welcoming me to the show. I'm humbled to be part of this panel. I hope I add value to it, but I must add that the person you have introduced and the one you're going to introduce next have a much larger profile than mine, especially in fomenting conflict and also resolving the same.
That is a lie.
Okay. Then with me, lastly, I have Dismas Nkunda, who is the Executive Director of Atrocities Watch Africa. Dismas has keenly followed conflicts in the Great Lakes region. He also has a journalistic background. Dismas, it's good to have you again. You're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, Felix. Thanks. And don't listen to what Edgar says.
For sure. I will not take Edgar's word for that. Okay, gentlemen, lady, let's hit the ground running. And I know Edgar and Dismas, we've been here before and we've talked about DRC. I think twice already. And you are the gurus when it comes to the geopolitics of the region. And did you see this coming? Where we are now? Let me start with you, Edgar. Did you see this coming?
What are we seeing that we've not seen before? If I may ask that question.
Okay. Did you see this coming at this point in time?
Actually, the fact that it delayed is what surprises me, because the writing was on the wall. And quite frankly, in the discussions we've had before, it's been patently clear that that is the direction we're heading. And once Uganda elected to start doing roads in the DRC, and in particular the Bunagana Ruchuru Goma road, there's also another road that is supposed to be done from Goma, terminating at Kisangani, particularly the port of Kisangani, so as to be able to connect with the navigable part of the River Congo to take for freight to Kinshasa. Now, the presence of Uganda in that area, that's one of the most mineral richest areas of the DRC. Secondly, doing that road diverts traffic from another route that rivals this route. So it was only a matter of time that conflict would escalate to this level. And we have seen this before, and I don't see anything much different from what has happened before. And we shall be talking about it in depth, that unless and until we have institutional mechanisms to foster dialogue and consensus, we are going to repeat the mistakes we have done in the past. And Congo, as indeed Che Guevara postulated, that Africa is shaped like a gun and Congo is the trigger. 25 years ago, we were talking about the things that we are talking about now. 25 years is almost a generation. Dismas will tell you in 1994, he did extensive coverage of the conflict. Not 1994, from 1990, when the RPF, aided by Uganda, invaded Rwanda. He covered that conflict in detail. So we are talking of 32 years, a generation. We are repeating the same mistakes, and the issues that were defining the conflict then continue to recur. So the question is, especially with the so-called intelligentsia or the elite, are we doing enough? Are we doing enough to shape the agenda? Are we doing enough to correct the wrongs of the past? So to answer your question, the writing was on the wall. Nothing different from what has happened in the past. The dynamics are still very similar, only that the faces and names may have changed. But in this whole conflict for the last 30 years, we have had two constant names. The rest have been variables, but the names have been the same, 2 or 3 names, and they are both generals.
Thank you so much. Miriam, you've heard, is it a case? Okay, you've heard what Edgar said. The writing was on the wall. So is the script the same? A bit of a different cast, but with the same superstars in it? What's your take?
I think much of the context is actually the same, but I think times have changed. I want to differ from Edgar. I'm so optimistic about the conflict right now. It looks like a conflict, but I think it's a way forward. Like it's a positive conflict. Today we have the EAC regional force. We have AU and UN joining forces to resolve the conflict in Congo. And I think those components were missing in the previous conflict. But there are so many things which are still missing, especially the local participation. I want to see the people of DRC fighting for DRC, not foreigners, not international bodies. I want to see UN live in Congo. MONUSCO has been like a permanent factor in DRC, and it's part of the conflict. So as long as we still see the same components, the same players, like Edgar said, we still see the 2 generals taking the lead role in the whole act. We still see the same players, the US, the MENO conflict. The presidents in DRC might have changed, but not so much has changed so far. So I'm a bit optimistic because of the EAC regional role, but still it's the same circle of conflict, and unless the efforts are improved and there is a lot of effort put in, I think we are going to see another vicious cycle of the same over again.
Okay, all right. Dismas, the writing was on the wall. It wasn't a question of when, not if. But help us understand here, what are really those undercurrents of this conflict? What are those interests at play? Is it money? Is it ethnicity? What are we dealing with? You followed this conflict.
Thanks, Felix. That would be a dissertation for a PhD, but we'll try to see how we can break it. We can try to break it down with the help of Edgar. Now, did we see it coming? Yes, absolutely. I could have told you with certainty that the moment Shuja was announced, it was just a question of when, not how, that that conflict, that M23 was going to resurrect. Remember, M23 was defeated once and it fled. Its political wing fled to Rwanda, its military wing fled to Uganda, and it was interned in a military facility in Western Uganda, I think in a place near Kamwenge. It was interned there. How did they leave? How did the army return back to Democratic Republic of Congo? when they were being kept and at the knowledge of the government of Uganda, the military authorities in Uganda. That's one question. The second part is that Congo is simply too rich for anyone to let it go. Like Edgar said, Che Guevara told you, it's just too much a jewel. Let me give you statistics, a bit of statistics. Uganda has been the country, the leading exporter of gold in the region, more than other cash crops that we export. Where do we get the gold from? How many gold mines do we have? The gold processing in Entebbe. Now, when recently the government of Uganda decided to put a tax on gold, on an exportation of gold, now the gold prices fell because the people who are supplying it from other sources from Democratic Republic of Congo felt it was no longer making business sense. So now gold has gone down. Now, I'm trying to explain to you that Democratic Republic of Congo, its riches, it's not only the regional hegemony that is interested in Congo. You have had individuals from Belgium, from America, from all over the world that are interested. That's why DRC has 133 militias. Now, 133 militias, they are all not opposed to the government. Some of them are just there simply to protect the wealth that they control in a particular area. You'll be surprised to know that ADF, that the one that we are trying to flash out, controls a large area to the extent that people even pay tax. That is ADF, a foreign force that has come out of DRC from Uganda, but can manage to create such a sphere within a short period of time. So imagine others who have been existed for a long period of time. So as long as DRC remains dysfunctional in certain areas, as long as the question of belonging and nationality keeps changing, as long as the countries in the region, some of them are too poor and they see Congo as a backdrop there where you can be able to fill up your national coffers, even when the East African force, my sister Miriam, even if the East African standby force, even if the world standby force comes, DRC is going to remain what it is. Actually, on that point, which I find a little bit difficult, I was on NBS this morning and they were asking me that, do you think that the East African standby force is going to work? It can't work. It will not. I know that Uhuru has summoned the army commanders of all the member states of the East African community to meet in Nairobi, but I can assure you, if you are going to get an East African standby force, whose forces are we going to use? Uganda's forces, Rwandese forces, Burundian forces, Congolese forces,
Tanzania
forces. You use Tanzania and Kenya and South Sudan. So the point I'm trying to make is that this conflict can only be resolved by elements of understanding why people are interested in DRC Congo and why DRC has remained the way it is, giving advantage for people to be able to exploit at will. I think the moment we go into the basics of that, the M23 are claiming that one of the reasons they have taken up arms. I saw their spokesman speaking the other day from Bunagana. By the way, Felix, for your own information, Edgar knows, my home is 3 kilometers away from Bunagana. So I am very close to Bunagana. I walk to Bunagana every evening. So I know what
Dismas, you're much closer to...
We Congolese.
I know some of our relations have been mentioned adversely in UN reports in relation to the M23.
Yes, absolutely.
As close as first cousins.
Yes, absolutely. And you are very right. I can't mention my cousins here, but they have been mentioned in terms of their closeness with M23 and its activities. So Felix, yes, the conflict is there, but it's much bigger than what we are ascribing when we are speaking of the recent clashes that have happened. Those clashes are going to happen. They have happened last week. Even if they resolve them, they are going to come back during our lifetime.
Okay, interesting. Edgar, let me bring you in here. So we are dealing with a conflict that primarily is driven by the resources in that country. Realistically speaking, how do we navigate? What would be your advice to deal with this long-standing conflict that actually is driven by interests around resources.
Beg your pardon, what do we resolve the conflict, you said? I lost you there.
How do you resolve a conflict? Because I understand when you go to war, when you have a war that, for example, when you have a conflict that is fueled by interest in resources, then you are dealing with something that will keep recurring. In the context now that DRC is part of the East African community, how would this bloc deal with this question of Congo, where there are interests of resources involved, and the countries that are accused of fueling this conflict are part of the same bloc?
I have written on this subject as well as spoken before. One of the papers I've written and I've seen being circulated in various think tanks and Western embassies is entitled Vulcanization, Dialogue and Conflict Resolution in the DRC. Vulcanization, Dialogue and Conflict Transformation. There is no silver bullet to resolving the whole conundrum of the hostilities in the DRC. However, what is critical is to transform these communities into productive communities. The question would be, what needs to be done for these communities to be transformed into productive societies? One, Dismas has already indicated that there are over 100 militia forces in the DRC, in the Eastern DRC. Actually, at the last count, I think the ICG report, International Crisis Group report of the 5th of May, 2022, they counted, I think, 132 militia groups in the DRC. I've mentioned before that these groups are composed of mainly mercenaries, and they are led by soldiers of fortune, at the service of the highest bidder, one who is interested in accessing the resources, the natural resources of that part of the DRC. Now, it has a regional and international cartel. And my use of the word cartel is, I'm trying to be polite here. It's a euphemism for a much more impolite word, which I'm not going to deploy here. So it has the regional and international aspects, dimensions, but the local dimensions, very often, you hear discourse directed in terms of ethnicity. And I don't know, Dismas, if you permit me to be more candid and bold on speaking about these matters of ethnicity. I'm appealing to Dismas because he's my elder, and I look up to him on many things, especially since he's an expert at communications. I look up to him to guide me on some of these intricate issues.
Go ahead, Edgar.
Okay, now in DRC, we've been told that the Tutsis are threatened. Yes, the Tutsi do face an existential threat. The existential threat coming from within the DRC and the dynamics that shape the DRC, from the local communities within North and South Kivu. However, the Hutu too face existential threats. They face existential threats from the local communities in the DRC. They as well face existential threats from the border across. In 1996, the people from the border across conducted military activities in that area of the world, and there's a UN report detailing what happened. So when it comes to the aspect of ethnicity, the Tutsi, the Hutu, then even within the Rwandaphone communities, the so-called Tutsi, they are the Banyamulenge who are threatened by other Tutsis because they are competing for interest there. That's the reason we have Gumino and Twirwaneho. Gumino and Twirwaneho, some people call them militia groups, but they are more like the Arrow boys and Amuka boys that were formed in Iteso to fight against the advancing forces of Konyi. So many people coach it as an ethnic conflict, but that narrative is driven by outsiders to justify their incursion into the DRC to continue the same agenda of accessing the resources there. Remember, some of these countries in the region have no natural resources of their own. They are poor, and therefore can only prosper by deepening a predatory economy on the resources of the DRC. Now, what am I trying to emphasize? That dialogue that fosters consensus, intra and inter-ethnic dialogue, and by extension, inter and intra, what I would call country dialogue between the protagonists in this conflict, is very critical for resolving this conflict. Now, Dismas talked about Uganda accessing the gold and being the biggest export earner for Uganda. I must add that even without our presence in the DRC, gold has continued Uganda has continued to attract gold from the DRC, even without forcefully being involved there. The reason being that gold has become a medium of exchange. If you look at the figures of Bank of Uganda detailing the gold exports from Uganda, rather, if more appropriately called re-exports from Uganda, they are inversely proportional to the goods, the commodities that are bought from Uganda by the DRC citizens. So gold is used as a medium of exchange, and I believe that is a smarter engagement with the DRC. Many times when you talk to people in this region, they think they are going to trade in the DRC rather than to trade with the DRC. Now, trading with the DRC and trading in the DRC are two different things. If you go to trade in the DRC, you're enhancing the livelihoods of the natives there. It's more of a symbiotic relationship. So we've got to change our mindset to address this conflict. It has to be holistic and not just look at it in the facet of ethnicity. It has to be looked at in the regional dynamics, economic and political. It has to be looked at the international dynamics, and any solutions that ought to be designed should center around mindset change. Thank you, Felix.
Wow, interesting. Thank you so much, Miriam. Before we go for a break, I think let me first park in your corner. You've had Edgar. Edgar looks at dialogue, not necessarily silver blade, but it can go a long way in addressing this long-standing conflict that is purely driven, according to Edgar and Dismas, I think primarily driven by economic interests, drawing in very many actors, including international actors, in the conflict of DRC. If we are to take the path of dialogue and looking at the geopolitics of the region, you look at Uganda, look at Rwanda, they have vested interests there. So you are remaining. Burundi has its own interests. Looking at the relationship Burundi has with Rwanda as well. So you have Kenya, you have Southern Sudan. When you look at the region, and if you look at the EAC community, realistically, how should the conversation around dialogue be structured, and who can take lead on this one?
We have so many. Actually, I agree with Edgar on the dialogue part of it. We have so many players who can take lead in dialogue. We have civic players, we have church leaders, we have non-profit organizations. We have so many bodies, and that's why for me, I'm optimistic about the EAC, because bodies like IGAD are still instrumental in bringing peace in South Sudan. So such a bodies can be formed. We can still even form a new body. That was the International Committee of, what was it? Great Lakes region, that peace.
The National Conference of the Great Lakes.
Yes, but we can still form other agencies. We are not limited to whatever is existing today. We can form new ones. But what is important is that we shouldn't look at the military as the only solution for the conflict in DRC. We need a people-based solution, and the grassroots people, the cultural leaders, the local leaders in DRC, the inter-border communities, the church leaders, those people have to be involved. The lasting peace in a community has to be built by people from grassroots to the top, not top down, not international down, the way the DRC conflict is being resolved. So I agree with Edgar, we need dialogue. I agree we need many multi-pronged approaches to the issue of the conflict. And to comment on what Dismas said, I think EAC is is a very hopeful agency, even though the main leaders in EAC are part of the protagonists in the DRC conflict. We still have other players. We are not limited to the top leaders. I mean, if the presidents are the protagonists, we have the MPs, we have the judiciary, we have other bodies which can be part of the conflict resolution and transformation of the Great Lakes, the EAC community. So for the case of gold, I want to comment on what Edgar said, that the gold now has become the medium of exchange. I think Edgar was very diplomatic on that. You previously commented that some of the rebel groups in DRC are mercenaries. So why don't you think that Uganda can also deploy mercenaries and get illicit gold in from DRC? So the issue of minerals, the issue of trade needs to be localized. I think DRC, in its current governance, the way the central government is governing it, is too weak to control most of the outlying mining areas of mining regions of its country. So they need localized forces, more enforcement, and if anybody, whether it's AU or UN or whatever, wants to help DRC, they need to empower the local governments, whether they get a federal government or whether they stay the way they are. But the local governors need to be empowered. As long as there is no strong leadership on ground, every other predator will find a gap to enter DRC and cause confusion. So it's strengthening the local community is very key in bringing lasting peace in DRC.
Thank you so much. Comments are coming through, but let's go for a short break. When we return, we'll resume with this discussion, looking at the possibilities of dialogue and the actors involved and the role of ESC. And also I'll be reading some of the comments that are coming through the feed. But let's break for now for a minute or two.
My people, a cup of coffee, please. There is tea, everything. Snacks are on the way.
Your thanks, but the reason that's why we are here, our people need improve different services. We at least need an ambulance at every center.
My sub-county is the forest. We used to depend on the former MP's vehicle, but when he lost his elections, he took away his vehicle.
Of course.
So what does that mean?
Use your budget as a district to procure the ambulances.
Oh, if I could, I would. But unfortunately, government operates differently.
I'm saying, Chairperson, this is very serious and urgent.
Yes, I know. And why are they called local leaders then?
Local government.
You people, who sent you here?
I know, of course. We are concerned citizens who are watching people dying every day.
We've lost our beloved ones just because of poor health services.
Something has to be done.
You are right. Something has to be done, and very fast.
Yes.
That's transport for you. Go back.
But
all your concerns are taken care of. I will handle.
But
Have a
Chairman,
safe journey.
but this man seems to undermine our cause as to why we're here.
No, don't misunderstand me. This is just transport, no strings attached.
Chairman, we came here to discuss and find solution to our problems. But it seems you don't want to engage with us. Let's go and mobilize people, and you will see how serious we are.
Good citizens, let us always hold our leaders accountable. Leadership is a service, not a privilege.
Contribute today at www.politicalfinanceafrica.org/donate.
Welcome back from the break. You're still watching ACFIM Talks, and we're discussing the politics behind the conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, looking at whether is it driven by economic interests or it is a question of ethnicity, as it has been peddled. And before we went for a break, we were discussing the path to solving this long-standing conflict. But let me read a bit of these comments that have been coming through. Julius Caesar Rukaya is saying that dialogue is good, but it's not a magic one to deal with the DRC conflict. The biggest problem is that no one wants to admit to exactly what is happening in DRC and their contribution. Okay, there was just another comment coming through from Ahimswe Amon, who's saying that the International Conference for the Great Lakes region, headquartered in Burundi, was meant to help in creating a platform for dialogue, but it was infiltrated by regional cartels. All right. There's also another comment coming from Stephen Muneza, who is saying that Edgar and Dismas, don't you think Uganda and Rwanda's interest in Eastern Congo stems from a variety of economic and political reasons? I think Edgar and Dismas, you've picked that one. You'll have a comment on it as well. Let's see if we have other comments coming through. Okay, there's another one coming from Rogers. He's saying, I honestly agree with my elder Dismas Nkunda. Additional force of East Africa forces will not help troubled North Kivu and Ituri province, but instead will exacerbate the problem. All right, Rogers, that's your comment coming through. Then we have Julius Caesar saying again that until neighboring states fully take responsibility of their contribution to this conflict, we shall keep having roundtable discussions with backdoor catalytic provocations. One step forward, three backwards. All right. Let me bring in here Dismas. Before we went for a break, Dismas, I think there was a discussion that was building shape around dialogue. Probably you'll have a comment on it, but let's look at, when you look at the East African community, which DRC is now a member, having joined somewhere around March, I think towards the end of March. And some have argued that the DRC has brought its baggage to the EAC. Looking at particularly the fact that there are actors like Rwanda, Uganda, part of DRC, accused of supporting M23. How poised is the EAC, or how central and how capable is the East African community in taking lead in terms of brokering this dialogue everybody thinks can be partly contribute to solving this problem?
Felix, thank you. I think I have already stated and said that it's a very difficult proposition for the East African community to think that they can sort out. It was very good for us, for the East African community and the entire population, everybody, politically, socially, that we integrated. No, we brought DRC into the East African community, bringing in about another 80 million people to be part of the community, making the East African community reach the Atlantic Ocean and also the Indian Ocean, which was making it one of the biggest blocks in the region. At the same time, DRC and Tanzania bringing in the element of us now being part of SADC without necessarily sitting in SADC, because DRC and Tanzania are also members of the SADC, the Southern Africa Development Corporation. But to the point of the negotiations, in particular the one of bringing about peace in DRC, look, Felix, Uganda has interest in Democratic Republic of Congo. We have enumerated them, myself and Edgar, and partly my sister Miriam, is that Uganda, you know what kind of investment we are having in Democratic Republic of Congo. investments. We have a military there presence. We are trying to build roads, some of them starting from Nagana, the various border points, another one starting from in Kasese up to Beni, from Kasindi to Beni. So there are so many interests that Uganda has in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Like Edgar said, way back in 1998, Uganda went into Democratic Republic of Congo. What we ended up having was that we went there and looted. We were supposed to be changing the government in Democratic Republic of Congo when we were supporting Kabila, when we were supporting Bemba, when we were supporting Professor Wambadia Wamba, etc. And we ended up looting. A commission of inquiry was set up, which was headed by Justice Potter. Justice Potter was in Uganda, and he produced that report. And that report named the individuals who were culpable in the looting of the Democratic Republic of Congo. At least on the side of Uganda, that was done. Those individuals, though, none of them was ever taken to book. They are still around, some of them, and nothing has ever happened to them. You know what? Uganda was taken to the International Court of Justice, and in September this year, we are going to pay the first installment of $65 million out of the caution that we have got, out of the decision that was made by the ICJ that Uganda is culpable of the plunder that happened in DRC. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because three countries have great interest, 3 countries out of the 7 in the EAC. Uganda has great interest in what happens in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The biggest borderline Uganda has, and the most porous borderline Uganda has, is the one between Uganda and Democratic Republic of Congo, all the way from Kisoro to Paida. The second is a country like Rwanda. Rwanda has its interest in the Democratic Republic of Congo is twofold. One, it's business. Second, it's survival. If the presence of the former the individuals who committed the genocide in 1994, the presence of other armed elements whom they think that they can destabilize Rwanda, there's no way, for existential purposes, like Edgar said, the government in Rwanda can accept that another army. I remember there's a time when President Paul Kagame was asked by a journalist, I think it was BBC, they asked him, Your Excellency, is it true that your troops are already in Congo? I think that's about 10, 15 years ago. He said yes. And the journalist was stuck. He didn't know what to answer next. They had thought he would say no. He said yes, they are there. Then they asked, then he said, why did you send the troops there? He said, if you have an enemy, do you wait for the enemy to come to your home, or you attack him before he reaches your home and you can? So the interests of Rwanda into DR Congo are enormous, be it business, be it its security apparatus, be it its own existence. The Red Tabara is a rebel group that is operating in Democratic Republic of Congo. Red Tabara has been attacking Bujumbura and Gitega governments in Burundi. So already 3 governments out of the 4 or the 7 have been removed. So who is going to make the decision? We know the importance of President Yoweri Museveni in the EAC. We know the importance of President Paul Kagame in the East African community. President Uhuru Kenyatta might be having the gravitas of saying that this one I can do because as the chair of the East African community. But the practical part of it is that you have to assemble an army, you have to get ammunition, you have to get military advisors, you have to get equipment, you have to get finances. Now, if Uganda is already financing its own army in DRC to remove the ADF, it's financing the roads. Where another appropriation of money are they going to get? So my view is that DRC, its EAC, might show a face that it's doing something. Miriam, I would agree if we had IGAD, if we had the African Union coming in, I would be perfectly very happy with them to be able to intervene. But my understanding and my reading of a period of time, how things are done in this region, I don't think the EAC has the gravitas to be able to sort out the problems of DRC. The problems of DRC are much more political, much more economic. They are not a military solution of saying that we will overwhelm people, the rebel groups, we will overwhelm the military, the different factions that are in the DRC, overwhelm them militarily, and then in the morning there will be peace. No, so it doesn't work like that.
Okay, all right. I'm going to come to you, Miriam, but let me first quickly run to Edgar. You've had Dismas, and I think you share the same view. But some people have argued that probably this conflict is going to be the litmus test of EAC. Those who still think that the EAC, under the chairmanship of Uhuru Kenyatta, given the comments that came through, those who think that probably he can do something around it, is perceived to be a bit more neutral to this conflict than any other countries, especially as Dismas mentions them, that is Rwanda, Uganda, and Burundi. Do you agree that probably this conflict is a litmus test to the EAC now that DRC is a member?
The coming of the DRC into the EAC was going to have its own dynamics and set of difficulties and challenges for us. I've said it somewhere, and this must check me if I get a bit rough on the edges. If we are to deploy the principles that govern the EAC, it's only Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya that qualify to be in the EAC. The other countries do not meet the bare minimum of the principles on governance, on this much you'll agree with me that the other countries really don't meet the bare minimum standards of this. So the loading of the other states, Rwanda, Burundi, DRC, South Sudan, it's excess baggage for us to carry. We are at different levels of development, we are at different levels of understanding. However, the underlying, if you look at the populations of these countries, we are, again, I'm going to get rough on the edges. We are a primordial, we are a pre-scientific, we are a peasantry society. Even our intelligentsia, we purport to be Pan-Africanists. We are Pan-Africanists intellectually, but when it comes to our mental disposition, when it comes to the frame of mind, we are provisionalists. And I'm using the word provisionalist as a polite term to refer that we are basically tribal. And the leaders who are emerged are tribal chiefs, no different from the Shaka Zulus, the Kinjikitales of them days in the pre-colonial days. And what people are pursuing is mainly tribal, narrow tribal interests. We have even had some of the major protagonists invoking primordial identities of 500 years ago to justify their influence and claim to leadership and superiority. You know as well as I do that in the modern world, in the civilized world, it's science, it's technology, it's innovation, capital, and the movement of the four pillars freely within the world. And it's striving, communities, countries are striving for mastery in obtaining the four. And whoever masters science, technology, innovation, and has the capital can therefore claim superiority over other people. Now, you know as well as I do that for the four pillars to thrive, you need other countries. You cannot trade alone. You have to trade with some other entity. Why do we talk of the BRICS today? Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It's because they've taken steps to addressing that. 50 years ago, Dismas is a little older than 50. At the time Dismas was being born, India and China were peasantry societies. Brazil itself was a peasantry society. How have they been able to transform? How have they been able to transform? Are we in East Africa following the same trajectory? Would you say that? I mean, even look at the leadership that is emerging in the region. Vesige used the adjectives stupid and foolish in a reference to the elite in Uganda. I wish to associate myself with the same statements. We, the elite, are failing the region. We, the elite, are failing the region. We are actually part of the problem. So unless we wake up from that slumber, we are going to continue in this cycle. And whoever, you've heard of the people in the region who are pontificating violence, who are pontificating war. Now, the moment you pronounce war, The moment you organize for violence, expect other people to counter-organize for violence. Violence builds more violence. Violence builds destruction. Violence yields more tears. So now enter Uhuru Kenyatta. Uhuru Kenyatta is not entirely a neutral party as would like to think. Maybe militarily because of no proximity to the DRC. Believe me,
I agree.
Uhuru Kenyatta is one of the main reasons as to why he's looking forward to retirement is to go and trade in the DRC.
Yes.
My law firm hosted a business meeting, a business breakfast last Wednesday. It was live on many televisions. It was on ABS. It was on NTV. The chairman central. Pardon? You watched. The chairman Central Bank of Kenya, Senior Counsel Muhammad Nyaoga, came to give the keynote address. And Nyaoga is, for lack of a better expression, is a member of the deep state in Kenya. And believe me, and he didn't miss his words. They are all looking forward to what? To the DRC. Equity Bank of Dr. Mwangi was involved in that breakfast meeting we had. They are all looking to the DRC. And what are they going to do there? To trade. And for them to trade,
the biggest delegation that was sent shortly before DRC joined the East African community was a business community from Kenya that visited to see the opportunities they have in DRC.
And who sponsored it? It was Mwangi.
Yes.
Mwangi is also part of the deep state in Kenya. Him and Nyaoga are basically part of the same formation. So to say that Uhuru Kenyatta is neutral would be I think a misnomer. I think the more neutral parties to this DRC country are not really neutral. For instance, South Africa, the Republic of South Africa has premised its growth plans on electric supply. They suffer enormous deficits in electricity. Now, for the ANC to maintain its hold on the state, for the ANC to retain power, they will need to grow, they'll need to drive economic growth far double the rate of population growth. So they need a minimum of 6 to 7% for them to maintain political stability and forestall the disillusionment of the black population there. That can only happen if they industrialize. Now, South Africa does not have access to that power. They are looking to Inga Dam. They are looking to Inga Dam to power their their energy, to power their electricity. They are looking to Inga Dam. Now, anybody who interferes with the plans of the DRC, anybody who plots to destabilize DRC, is in direct confrontation with South Africa. And like I've said before on this show, that many events turn on information that is not available to the public. I don't know how much I can mouth at in such a forum. And this must discuss freely when there are two of us, when it's just two of us over coffee. But on this show, I have to be a little bit, I know there are certain sensitivities that I don't want to incense. But believe me, France has sent security advisors. It has sent trainers for FARDC. America is involved. Some of the civil society organizations you saw that were organizing the demonstrations have a hand in the National Endowment for Democracy. Dismas and I know who bankroll National Endowment for Democracy. So, as it were, even if we are to talk of SADC, Angola all have interest in the DRC. The DRC is the trigger. Like Che Guevara said, DRC is shaped like a gun, and the DRC is what? Is the trigger. And unless we go back to the drawing board and address the intricate issues that we are basically a primordial society, pre-scientific. That's why we're going back into identities of 500 years ago. And I'm avoiding to mention names because I don't want to incense sensitivities in the region. But we are aware that certain officials in the region have been reckless in their statements.
Yes, yes.
They have been reckless in their statements, and it has infuriated the Congolese. The Congolese parliament sat and gave a declaration. This is the legislative body of a country. And this comes, I speak with a heavy heart, because Uganda just sent a delegation there to talk trade. Then you have officials within Uganda pulling in a different direction. So it begs many questions.
Edgar, don't worry. I think there is a change, a military change that is going to happen.
No, that one is certainly, it's imminent. It is imminent. It is imminent. It is imminent. And would be lying to ourselves if we don't address issues in the 3 dimensions. We can come here, pontificate, talk this, speak smartly, speak the finest English language that we can deploy, but we must go back to the basics and address them. We need intra-ethnic dialogue in the DRC. We also need a regional dialogue to build a regional consensus. There's no way, and I must state it very clear, Kigali will have to be brought to the dialogue, the table of dialogue. It can't continue promoting violence that it has done for the last 150 years and think that other countries or other communities are going to fold their hands. They've got to sit down and have dialogue for us to have sustainable peace and stability in the region.
Okay, thank you, Edgar. I really see, I can feel your passion and I feel your pain in this one. The bigger question is now, I think the questions lingering on my mind and many people out there is that if we have a dialogue, who can actually bring all these competing interests together and charter a way forward? But let me come to you, Miriam Kyomugasho. Let me quickly bring you to this issue of, you know that Uganda is in DRC for the famous Operation Shuja. Now, when you look at the conflict, in the light of this conflict, what are the implications? For now, it has been suspended. We all know where we are at the moment, and I think yesterday, the president held a meeting over the same. But what are the implications of this conflict, especially to Uganda's interests? And we all know why Uganda is in DRC, under the guise of the Operation Shuja.
Before I answer your question, I want to comment on what Dismas said. The East African regional players are also part of the conflict in DRC. Yes, Uganda is in DRC, Rwanda. So who will compose the regional force? I think the same conflicting members are the ones to join hands and form the regional peace force. They are now fighting as individuals, but when they come together as a group, they are supposed to adhere to the group command and orders. So we expect them to behave at least for a minimum of maintaining some peace as the dialogues continue. Yeah, we need so many dialogues, like Edgar said. And Edgar, I think you are so pessimistic about the interest. Those interests, the trade interests, every other country in Africa and outside of Africa is interested in DRC. Yes, DRC is the hub of the minerals, especially now that there is advocacy for green energy. 80% source of green energy is from DRC for the whole world. So we even expect more competition, more international trade, more robbers, more crooks, and more armed conflicts coming in DRC for minerals. But what should we do to that? African elites have to wake up. Like you said, they are so disappointing, yes. But we have to wake up and advocate for peace. We have to call upon these international bodies to ensure that there is peaceful and legal trade as far as DRC are concerned. I know there are so many bodies put in place to make sure that illicit minerals don't come from Congo. USC has something, and there is China. China also put up a body to ensure that they have clean minerals. But those bodies are not doing enough. So we have to ensure all the players, we have to call upon the players, the Chinese. If South Africa wants power, let it put money for peace processes so that it can have the Inga Dam developed and it has the electricity it wants. If Uganda and Rwanda know that they can't survive with a peaceful DRC, let them invest in building peace in DRC. So for me, I see the interest as the incentive, the better incentive for building a lasting peaceful solution for DRC, because we all know we need resources from DRC. And the East African community, whether who lives and who is interested in trade, yes, we expect the upcoming president to be responsible enough to take the lead and occupy the position that Uhuru was occupying, because Kenya is a big player as far as the East African community is concerned. And Tanzania is so far like a stabilizing factor. When you look at other members of EAC, Seven and Kagame are so heavily invested in DRC, so they can't do much, but Kenya and Tanzania and other countries can come up and join hands. I'm more especially interested in non-political players, the civic society, the church leaders, the non-government organizations, the other bodies, the academia. So much activism can bring peace. Activism has brought some effort in controlling the Boko Haram in Nigeria. We have seen a lot of activism calling for the pacification of that area. The conflict in Nigeria, by the way, is more related. It's kind of similar to the conflict in DRC. It's also about oil. It's about power control and the militias who are also fighting for power. And the country is as big as DRC. So the conflict somehow has a semblance as that of DRC. But we have seen a lot of prayers, especially the Africans in diaspora. You know, the largest population of DRC now, because of so many wars ever since independence, are living as immigrants in so many parts of the world. And they are very educated and they are rich and they have capacity to advocate for peace in Congo and take a bigger role. So if we call upon, as Pan-Africans, I know the word Pan-Africa has lost meaning to Ugandans, but it's still active. If we call upon the rest of the world, everybody interested in Africa, because DRC, as Edgar has stated, it has resources enough to develop the whole of Africa. The Inga Dam is strong enough to electrify and power industrialization in sub-Saharan Africa. The mineral resources in DRC are enough. The money coming out of it, even the jobs, if well explored, they're enough to develop the sub-Saharan Africa and even ensure that we are industrialized up to a developmental level. Yeah, we are primordial, like Edgar said, but we are not going to stay there. And having a young population, sub-Saharan Africa has a population, and we are looking ahead. That's why I'm so pessimistic. That's why I'm
optimistic.
I'm not pessimistic, no. I'm optimistic.
Well, you are young, so you have every reason to be optimistic.
No, ever since the last conflict in Kisangani, the 90s, and today, so many things have changed. We have flow of information. We have, like you said, Uganda was putting roads in the DRC. I think that is a positive move, though it's kind of, it can trigger some other players to really be suspicious, but it's very positive. And I wish other countries could also participate. We have African FDB funded structural infrastructure project, which has the north and the southern corridor roads and the railways interconnecting Africa. We need to connect, we need to integrate, we need to develop. No more time for conflicts. Really, we should get past that and look ahead. So I'm going to stay optimistic about the DRC. And this conflict, by the way, you've talked about Operation Suja Felix. I haven't forgotten your question. I think Uganda shouldn't be this. I mean, so many things have the generals, some of the people leading that operation, I may need some sort of internal retraining maybe. But I think it was positive, but it was done, maybe it shouldn't have been done the way it was done. I don't know, but anyway, ADF was attacking Uganda, and somehow Uganda couldn't sit and just let it be. So, but I think at this time they should withdraw and let internal processes in DRC maintain peace. Maybe we can stay at our borders and ensure protect our borders from the borderline as other processes rolling. That's why I was saying that the deployment of the regional force maybe can take over from the UPDF for now. And we look at other processes, the civil society, the governmental, intergovernmental, interparliamentary. We have so many spaces which we can engage in peace processes and encourage the governments of DRC to disarm the rebel groups and negotiate for and engage in peaceful conflict resolution.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Dismas, let me come to you on this one. Quickly, you can comment on the implications of this conflict to Uganda's interest, especially the Operation Shuja, which was a joint operation, and what's the implication now with this conflict at play? But also, as you comment on that one, I was here wondering whether we have a unifying incentive for the EAC, despite the competing interests, and Edgar has been very articulate on showing the interests at play from the various actors involved in this conflict. But is it possible that you can have a unifying incentive for the EAC to address this conflict? That one thing that can really ask and say, okay, I think we can now, for now, deal with this problem.
Thanks, Felix. I think let me begin with the last one. What is it possible that can be an impetus for the East African community to be able to intervene and sort out the problem of DRC? I said myself and Edgar, the competing interests are there. I think the magic bullet would come if only the leaders, you see, the current conflict, and in particular, the recent happenings in DRC, in the parliament in Democratic Republic of Congo, the suspension of the Operation Suja, etc. It's just leading you to a question of someone who is saying,
okay, sir. Thank you.
I have mistrust in what these other neighbors of mine are doing. What is possible is that the East African community per se, if it had that gravitas, that's what I said, the East African community is there in different forms. There is the secretariat that is based in Arusha. These ones are like civil servants. They are individuals who sit in the office. They are doing other things of trying to make the East African. There is the political leadership of the East African community, which currently is being headed by President Kenyatta. But you remember at a point when two countries within the region, within the EAC, even when they are under that pact of security and peace and stability, even when they conflict, between 2020 and 2022, the EAC couldn't sit simply because the head of state, who was the chairperson of the East African community, the late Pierre Nkurunziza, was not speaking to President Paul Kagame of Rwanda. And the EAC couldn't sit as heads of states. So the question is, which part of the EAC do we put our trust in? Is it the structure, the one which looks like the civil service? Is it the political leadership? Is it who do we put the capacity? My view, this is my view as Dismas, is that if the leadership of the EAC, the admission of DR Congo was done irregularly, Edgar and I have discussed this one, irregularly because there are certain conditions under the EAC protocol which you are supposed to fulfill before you become a member of the East African community. For sure, I can tell you with certainty, and I saw the application of Somalia. Somalia applied to join the EAC, it was refused.
Before?
Yes, it was refused because it didn't meet the criteria. Ethiopia has toyed with the idea of applying and joining the East African community. But the one of DRC, it was a decision made by the heads of states to say, we are waiving most of the problems, all the issues that DRC has to meet before it becomes a member, so that we can quicken the process. If they can do that, to quicken the process of admitting DRC, and there is no single opposition from Uganda, from the 6 member states, why is it that the same leadership cannot sit and say, you know what, this is now a member of ours, we need to treat it as a member of our region, and its stability and security is a matter of the East African concern. The stability of Rwanda is good for economic business for Uganda, Rwanda, DRC, DRC itself, and Burundi and Kenya, and other member states. Remember, by the way, we are going off it, but Tanzania also has a border with the DRC.
It has interests as well there.
And it has its own interests, Tanzania into the DRC. So that's the complex nature. To me, the political leadership can sit and say, we have decided. But the problem is that each one of them, they have certain things, peculiar things that they have of interest into DRC. And therefore, they can't compromise. They need to be able to say, you know, you are interested in the minerals, me, I'm interested in investing in roads, I'm interested in timber, I'm interested in the border politics of DRC. Let's agree on the nitty-gritty and then come to one solution. But the first question you asked was about what are the interests. Edgar is a diplomat. He's a lawyer. Me, I'm a journalist. So I can say what I have to say. is that one of the things that has become of a deep consequence of this conflict, in particular, is our dear General Lieutenant General Kainerugaba. He has consistently been communicating, but not communicating. Now, for those of us who studied communication, if he had managed to say, he was saying certain things, but saying it in cryptic nature. And some of the things he was saying, they play into the narratives of ethnicity, the narratives of superiority, the narratives of division, the narratives of hegemony. And if you look at the DRC's decision about stopping Suja, it's simply because they are saying that the son of the president entered into an agreement with another country to be able to, so I think the moment we start speaking the truth and getting to the core of saying what is the cause of this problem, and we agree to sort it out with the clarity that it's required, then the better it's going to be for us. I would think that if I was President Museveni, I would tell the Honorable, whom I respect as a general, I would tell him that for now, I would cease having those tweets that are causing much more. Because what is happening is that we get the tweets, they're giving us a different picture, but at the same time, we have an overture of saying that we are going in DRC because we are going to pursue the ADF, but at the same time, you are having, anyway, I don't know, it's draining.
Okay, yeah, indeed. Those tweets, I think they ruffled and rattled the Kinshasa administration the wrong way. We have borrowed a couple of minutes, so I have about 10 minutes to bring this discussion to a close. It's quite interesting. Let me first come to you, Edgar, here. You can weigh in on my question, which I asked Dismas, but also the question that I wanted to throw to you is whether these competing interests all these countries have in Congo, whether they can be accommodated as we try to charter a way forward to address the long-standing conflict in DRC. Yeah, I think for me, at the bottom line of all this, there must be a way forward. Otherwise, we cannot keep saying Congo will continue to be a victim of its wealth.
Can these interests be, you said, harmonized? Can they?
Yeah, can they be accommodated as we pursue the path of dialogue? Because I know for a fact that even the war, even the Ukraine-Russia war, there are interests in there. So every conflict has interests that are always at play. But when we talk about dialogue, it's finding a way of accommodating these interests. Is it possible to accommodate these interests that the different actors in the region have in DRC Congo and check a way forward to address this long-standing problem in DRC?
Oh, very much so. These interests can be harmonized, and like I said, we have to start with our mindset. We have to have a mindset change. One of the critical issues is we had the delegation that went into the DRC, led by Dismas's contemporary cohort, what is this title? Senior Presidential Advisor, stroke, is it special duties?
Odrick.
Odrick, I don't. His portfolio is very long. I sometimes forget some of these titles. He led the delegation into the DRC. Made very big news. They went to Kinshasa. They had a charter flight from Uganda Airlines. They flew to Goma. All these dinners. But the feedback, I remember, I have deep relations in the DRC. Dismas and I have blood relatives in the DRC. I have deep friendships with the deep state in the DRC, and the feedback I have from them, they are very suspicious of Uganda because of our past. We've been condemned in a court judgment, and here we are now going to talk a language of trade, even before we clear what is pending. Our tray is still full, and we are bringing more issues or more. So the feedback I have is that, and I think this is what informs all processes. The feedback I have from there is that Ugandans think they are going to trade in the DRC. They think it's going to be a one-way. They're coming to take out of the DRC and not bringing. And that is, I think, is at the center is the crux of the matter in the DRC. DRC, like Miriam said, is very big. It has enough for everybody. But we must be cognizant of the fact that in my language, I and Dismas's language, we have a saying, Tamfura idatira. Tamfura idatira. You can't exist as an island. We are interdependent. We are interdependent. I exist because Dismas exists. Miriam exists because I exist, and vice versa. And that's how I was saying that we have to go back to the basics and look deeply into our own traditional methods of dispute resolution. So the moment we come to that realization that we exist because other people exist, and those other people exist because we exist, and therefore we must relate as equals, not coming to take away, but it's like what Waganda would say, mpanku way. That symbiotic relationship. Then these interests can be reconciled. I mean, you don't have to send an army. You don't have to send an army to mime, kill, and commit acts of genocide or sponsor a militia there for you to access their minerals. Simply build a refinery in your country. These resources will reach there. Have smart partnerships with Congolese. They lack electricity in the Eastern DRC, and it will take time for them before they can develop capacity for them to engage in real industrial production. But they will certainly, I mean, export electricity there, have co-location of industry, semi-finished goods, and go and package them there. That's how smart people act. Europe, I was trying to import some machinery from Australia, and the Australian company told me some complicated machinery in mining. Let me emphasize that the mining is in Uganda, not in the DRC, for a mining operation. And the Australians were telling me that they have co-location of their production plant in China. Now, China, Japan are societies that developed largely from technologies from other countries. They copied and applied. Some other people say they stole. I don't want to use the same words. They copied and applied. So likewise, in this region, we have to develop smart partnerships. And unfortunately for us, as we roll out the ballistic missile launchers, as we roll out the Sukhoi jets, and as the other country bankrolls M23 and what have you, the Kenyans are doing it smarter. They've come with financing, Equity Bank. What does Uganda and Rwanda have in terms of financing institutions to go and finance trade or investment and business opportunities in the DRC? So we have developed that mindset. We have to go back to the factory settings and realize that the DRC or the citizens of the DRC are equal citizens, rather are equal partners in this. And I emphasize this because one of the leaders in the region at a select audience said that he has never heard of Europeans being arrested for looting the DRC. And therefore, for people who claim that his country is looting the DRC, are out of order. That in any case, if the resources are not benefiting the DRC citizens, why don't we go and loot them? So that mindset has to change. Unless and until it changes, we're going to continue breeding conflict, we're going to continue breeding destruction and more tears for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And as we come to a close of this discussion, Miriam, in your parting shots, also because also attempt in a minute or two to propose how you can deal with this mindset, especially because I'm asking myself, how do you change the mindset of an individual or of persons with a predisposed mind of looting? They believe in grabbing as opposed to smarter approaches of trading. How do you change that mindset? And as we come,
sorry. Go ahead. Felix, what you've said about the mindset of looting, that's a problem of Uganda. You know, our leaders currently believe either in grabbing or something like that, and that's a big problem. But we could have done better, especially on the case of DRC. For instance, that trade delegation we send there, why would I want to say maybe Museveni decided that. Why would he has an military operation led by his son, then he sends a delegation led by his son-in-law, then he's the commander-in-chief. If people are already suspicious of you, and then you get your whole family and you assume they are leading a state delegation, a government delegation. For instance, if they had used the Uganda Investment Authority or Ministry of Regional Cooperation or Trade or some other government institution, that delegation would have been less suspicious than what it is right now. So changing the mindset, I think, is very possible, but I don't see our government currently doing it. So that is a big challenge. But I would like I said earlier, I see the conflict in DRC playing at so many areas. For instance, Dismas Nkunda said his relatives are there. So, for instance, if you have an RDC at the Bunagana border cooperating with another local leader across the border, and those people can cooperate and do the local trade, because most people, if you look at the people demonstrating on the border clashes, if you look at the people, these are ordinary people, ordinary peasant trading, ordinary market vendors. So such a people can be helped with the local leadership coming, cooperating and trying to create a way for interaction and cooperation. So the interaction and the dialogue need to happen at so many levels, and the way forward will be created. As in conclusion, I'm still optimistic about the DRC, and I'm hoping for a peaceful DRC in the future. But it will take all of us, especially the elites, the African elites, the African politicians, the African leaders at all levels, the civic leaders especially. We need to interact with each other. We need to know that these borders created around us, these borders were created by our exploiters. They are artificial. So as Africans as a body, we are one people, and we shouldn't let these borders and the local politics separate us. We should find a way of helping each other. We should find a way of trading with each other. We should find a way of developing each other instead of fighting each other.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dismas, your final remarks. Also, there was a question that came through. I think Gerard wanted to see whether there have been some calls that is it possible and how feasible is it to end this war by the breakaway of more people from DRC as one of those definite.
Felix, that's another debate altogether, and I address it. Sorry, I'm meeting it to your time, Dismas. Balkanization of the Congo. The balkanization of the Congo is a big, very, very volatile issue. And if you dare balkanize Congo and break it up, believe me, the rest of Africa will break up too. Dismas, let me let you discuss much more on that.
Okay, Dismas, your parting shots. But a comment on that one as well.
Yes, I think I agree with Edgar. It's anything that you touch on DRC and be able to say that there is a separation of one state going, because all those kind of revolutions that had been, there was the Katanga one, there are others, Edgar knows. There has always been an attempt to be able to separate certain entities, geographical entities, and being annexed, there has always been a talk, let's take North Kivu, let it be part of the Eastern Uganda or Rwanda, etc., etc. I don't think we should even think about that, because the moment you touch that, I think even some of the countries that border DRC, there are nine countries that border DRC. Yes, all of them will have a problem.
We'll go up in flames.
Yes, my parting shot is to agree with, like I said, I come from the DRC border, really very close. And I have relatives across in a place called Jomba, who are my maternal mother's
So you're Congolese by proxy?
By proxy, I'm Congolese.
We are all Congolese. The question is when the question is the date of arrival in our various territories.
And Felix, matters are not helped by the name Nkunda, having Nkunda there. So
Muvunyi is the Minister for Infrastructure in the DRC, and that's my middle name.
So we have relatives across. But what I'm trying to say is to agree with Miriam. There is the trade that has been happening between those countries even before the borders were erected to be there. Really, Kisoro alone, the number of Congolese that pass through Kisoro coming to Kampala to trade and buy goods in Ichikubo down here on a very day basis, it's unthinkable. Those are the kind of things we should be harnessing trade that is necessarily not the formal one, and people, so that the interaction goes on for some time. People, as long as they protect their business interests, the rest of these politicians we can deal away with, and we relate as individuals, and because our business interests and our survival is the most important thing. But I want to thank you, Felix, and to thank Coroneza Gerard, the people who have organized us for this talk. Thanks for having me again, and I look forward for another time.
Thank you so much. We bring this to a close. We are discussing the politics behind the conflict in Eastern DRC. Is it commercial interests, money, or ethnicity at play? And with me, I heard three very interesting panelists. I had Edgar Tabaro, who is a lawyer and partner at Karuhanga Tabaro Associates. I also had Miriam Kyomugasho, who is a Pan-African scholar based in Ohio, USA, and currently Director of Research at Center for Constitutional Governance, CCG. And as usual, I also had Dismas Nkunda, the Executive Director of Atrocities Watch Africa, who is also an expert in this area, as he has followed the conflicts in African Great Lakes region for quite some time. And I, Felix Kafuma, was the moderator. Till next time, let's keep the conversation going on our social media platforms. Bye-bye, stay blessed, and thank you.